Now, I'm imagining a lot of you are here today because, tell me actually, are you here because you want to learn about dyslexia? Are you here because you have dyslexia? Do you support people with it? Because this one is about phonological dyslexia. And we're going to go into a bit more detail about what exactly is phonological dyslexia? Should we be splitting it up in different subsections? And what does that actually mean for you as a practical reason? All right, so I'm just going to share my screen now. So what we normally do at Exceptional Individuals, so I see a few familiar faces, but a few new ones, is we mainly go over the main key neurodiversities. So dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, ADHD. And what I mean by key is that they're just the most common. Dyslexia being the most common of all, but yet a lot of people are just saying, yeah, I'm dyslexic, and they don't really know what they mean by that. What is the actual definition? Or what is the type of dyslexia? A quick overview. We support people who are neurodivergent. You can always go on our website if you want to learn more. Now, as I start off with dyslexia, it's important to describe what it is not, because I feel a lot of people have maybe an outdated understanding of it generally. And that says it's not about not being able to read or write or pronounce words. It's more about the fluctuation of abilities. So for instance, on this diagram, you can see this person is great at maths, struggles with the creativity side, an okay decision maker, terrible at communication. That is just an idea. And this is, see the spikes. Now, what we try to do in society, we normally focus on the bottom spikes, so the things that we're not good at, and that's all people really know dyslexia for. But what we really should be looking at is the strengths as much, if not more, because these are the things where you can add real value to society. I can also empower you to look at different job sectors that you've never really looked at before. And I just want to know, what type of dyslexias have you heard of before? So we've got phonological, surface, visual, primary, secondary/developmental, or acquired. Louise says, I have dyslexia. I struggle with pronouncing words, especially ones written down. I have never heard said before, want some more information about it and wondered if it's related. Well, you'll definitely be learning about that today. I have dyslexia myself. In terms of what dyslexia I have like a comorbid, which means you have like multiple. It's interesting. Most people here have heard of visual dyslexia. And that's interesting because when we think of dyslexia, we think of visual. We think of people who, struggle to like see words, but it's not to do with eyesight. It's about how the brain sees words and processes it. That is what we call visual dyslexia, which is the most common. But there are other types. Phonological, which we're going to tackle today, is about speech, about how the mouth is able to process and pronounce words. So if you struggle with the pronunciation. Surface dyslexia is more about processing. So maybe you've got a delay in answering or kind of being able to get like what's up here down to the paper. Primary dyslexia is, say, your parents have dyslexia and you acquired it via their genes. Secondary or developmental could be that your parents or family do not have dyslexia, and due to maybe something in the womb, something during pregnancy, you have dyslexia. And lastly, which we don't normally cover, is acquired. So acquired is when you have like a brain trauma and you can get dyslexia, but it's not quite the same as the others, but it's still worth noting that though you can't, dyslexia is a lifelong way of thinking, you can actually get dyslexia, but it's slightly different. So co-occurrent. So you can say co-occurring or comorbidity. We've moved away from the term. Oh, really? I'd be interested to know why. So Mena says you've moved away from using that word. I'd be interested to know why.
It's mainly because just the kind of negative connotations around the word morbid. So we kind of move away from using that term.
No, thank you. I mean, I always thought that word was a bit odd.
It is an odd word, isn't it? Just the fact it has the word morbid in it. So yeah, we've just tried to move away and keep a more kind of positive term for it. So we just use co-occurrence, or yeah, that's it really, co-occurrence.
Nice. No, I like that much more. And I think that brings up a good point. Everyone is still learning. The language is always developing and growing, and what it is now to what it is tomorrow could be vastly different. So if any of you do have anything to input, please do let me know.
I think it's very similar to how we had autistic spectrum disorder And now we have ASC, which is autistic spectrum condition. It's the same.
Yeah.
I think moving away from disorder to condition.
That's a really good point. As someone who is on the autistic spectrum, I've never liked the word disorder, but people, that seems to be the standard one approach. Even the word condition is a little bit problematic for some people. So you can't win all over.
No.
All you can do is just listen to people and react as time changes.
Yes, I agree. I think just keep it positive and we're in a good place, because then we can celebrate neurodiversity.
So Katie said, which was the one that is where you struggle to get words from the brain to the paper? That's normally related to surface dyslexia, but as mentioned, is it useful to think about these as different silos? Not really, because very few people only have one. You could look at it like these are different ways of dyslexia expressing itself. So you might have more one than the other. Okay, so moving sharply on, as we've got some good attendance now. So again, we'll be focusing on phonological dyslexia, but bear in mind that the vast majority of people who are dyslexic will have all the other ones that we mentioned, apart from acquired, linked in. About 70% of people who have dyslexia do have the phonological, maybe variant's not the right word, but part of like how it expresses themselves. So it is by far the most common. Now, I'm going to ask a few questions and feel free to answer. So on this is like, do any of you struggle to sound out words when reading? And you can either say rarely, sometimes, frequently, almost always. And Katie just said, I was wondering if this was down to my DCD, which is development coordination disorder, so dyspraxia. And you know what? All of these things interlink. I like to think of it more of a spectrum or a continuum. So it's not whether like I have one, I have the other. It's, you know, it varies. Farzana, do you have a question?
Yeah, I couldn't before, but I think it probably is with something to do with dyspraxia. I haven't been diagnosed with this dyspraxia, but I find it hard to say specifically. I could say it before, but I've got a feeling it's something to do with dyspraxia. My symptoms are, I think I spoke to you last time about this, and you said it's a lifelong condition of dyspraxia. It's not an adult onset. But I find it, some words I'm finding it hard to pronounce now. Is that because, well, I had a bad experience recently, which is like traumatic, or is that because of that my symptoms of dyspraxia were becoming more relevant? And I'm finding it hard to say words that specifically. I can't say it now.
I can't say that word either. I always end up saying the ocean. You know what? That's a really good question. And sadly, because I'm not a medical professional and I'm not there, I can't say. But what I can say is that it can change. You know, when you have something like this, it is for life, but different parts of your life can exacerbate the symptoms. So, for instance, if you're stressed, if you're under a lot of pressure, if something in your life has changed, where you've been able to cope or find coping mechanisms before, this can make it a lot more challenging. It also could be something else altogether. Typically, as we age, that does be able to like retrieve information can get more challenging. So it could be a number of things, but it's not uncommon anyway. It happens to a lot of people who have either dyspraxia or types of dyslexia.
Thank you.
Cool. So on this year, a lot of you said sometimes, and that sounds about right statistically, that it's not something which is every occurrence. It's not something which is going to stop you living your life, but it is that added bit of like baggage almost that you've kind of got to live with. Does anyone have any examples of similar words they normally mix up when reading out loud? And if so, what? I am really prone to just saying the wrong words. Like I remember when every time I want to say the word smash, I say smacked. I was like, oh man. Or if I want to say the Pacific Ocean, I'll say the Pacific, you know what I mean. So any words where you're quite often to say the wrong thing. So here we've got dysgraphia and dysgraphia. Yep, all the disses I'm continuously getting mixed up. And bear in mind, this isn't because you do not know the word. it's, you know the word, but the brain still chooses to like mix them up. So Clara said temperature and volume seem to be an issue. Zach says me and be, and weirdly had and at. Yeah, sometimes they make sense, don't they? But other times you're like, how did my brain get to that? And phonomes, I also struggle saying words, but I found in my first couple of years I could move from Canada to UK. I really struggled with saying words or how certain words. So it can change over time. All the words saying truck instead of lorry, or really actually instead of, or really actually instead of instantly. Yeah. Affect or affect. That's another really common one. So all of these words is a really common characteristic / trait of phonological challenges or different ways of processing. It can be quite comical in places, but other times it can get quite annoying depending how frequent it is. If someone's continuously correcting you all the time, I can see it gets annoying. I definitely know this gets worse when I'm stressed, big warning signs. Yeah, I'm the same. Some days I will be fine, you know, you won't even notice I've got dyslexia, and some other days I'm a hot mess. You know, all words are just kind of flowing out, getting mixed up. And what makes it challenging is that it can make your intelligence appear not so great, even though you are. Mat and math, yeah, that's a good one. So these are some good examples, because even some of these words are really easy to spell. Your brain can still get them muddled up. And when I'm reading to myself, not a problem. Other times it can be. Okay, names are quite good. Zara and Zena, I get mixed up quite a lot. So moving on, because that's a good example. Sounding out words that are absolutely nonsense. So try and read this out yourself. Who doesn't love Lewis Carroll? But towards brilling and the silif trovs dig gruff and gribble in the womb, or mizzy were the bug groves and the moms rather outgrab. I don't know. I don't know what it's saying. And this is kind of interesting because when words are made up, our brain finds it very difficult to word them, because why we normally focus on, say, dyslexia in children is because that's where it appears most prominent. But as we get older, it's not that it disappears. It's more that our brain learns to find coping mechanisms, strategies in place. Yet when we find books like this, the Jabberwocky, which I recommend reading, it's completely gobbledygook. And it feels as if you were a child all over again when you're beginning to read. Katie said she finds it difficult to remember tenses sometimes, like there's been and being, and their nouns and verbs. That is very much related to dyslexia. I can't remember, help me if anyone knows, but are there like 6 different tenses? The English language actually has quite a lot of tenses, and who knows what, I don't know. I remember I did my my TEFL, you know, where you teach English abroad, and it was actually surprisingly difficult.
That's probably because our system probably comes partly from French.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And also if you try to learn another language, you know, when you have different genders, or is it sexes attached to the words, or you know, with Spanish or French, actually, they have different genders. I don't know what sex and orange is. It can make it very challenging. Okay, so on this one, when you see this time, how do you read it? Like, you know, there's so many different ways to tell the time. And I'll be curious to know, because what typically happens is our brain learns to read it in one way. And if someone, for instance, says it in a different way, your brain will just like short wire and it, you know, will not compute. Kay said she gets sequence sentences mixed up, miss things out, often called ditzy, foreign language, a no-go. Completely appreciate that. Everyone keeps telling me, of course you can learn another language. You know, everyone can. It just takes practice. And I'm like, I really can't. You know, I have tried for so many years, and it, you know, goes in one word. And I get people who like, they get so angry at me. They tell me their name, and I say it. Ooh, feedback. And I just keep saying it. And I'd never, ever get it right. Okay, so Sarah's 6. So most of you would say 6 o'clock, 6 a.m. I don't know if any of you get this, but if, say, someone says, okay, I'll meet you at 1400 hours, it will take me quite a lot to process it in order to convert it into my head, or I have to use my fingers in order to figure it out. Sarah says, I begged my French teacher to pass me because I tried so hard, but yet it was so bad. I have tried to learn Mandarin, Portuguese, French, Spanish. It just wasn't happening.
So sorry, can you just repeat that question again? Can you repeat the question? What was the question, sorry?
Well, on this, well, the question was, could you read the time? Would you say, for instance, 6 in the morning, 600 hours, 6 o'clock, 6 a.m.? And the reason why this is relevant to phonological dyslexia is depending how someone says the word and you hear it, even though they're asking the exact same question, or you might not be able to convert it in your head quick enough. So if you say 5:45, I would really struggle with that. But if you say it's 5:45, I would find that remarkably much easier, despite being the same thing. Right, next one. Who here ever gets confused between left and right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go for it.
Can I please say something on this one? I've started a college course, well, I'm based on computers, and the teacher was, I think she found it quite funny because I was trying to learn the mouse, and I didn't know what on the mouse, I didn't know if it was right click or left click. And she said, that's your left and that's your right. But I'm thinking, then she made a comment which I kind of found quite embarrassing. She said, well, it's like my full say with your hand, just move with your hand and make a left, make an L. So then you know what left and right is. But I just thought, being a teacher, she might be aware of it. But then some part of me thinks she might not know what dyspraxia is. Is that part of dyspraxia?
A lot of it is all related, and whether to say it's because of is quite challenging. But to say, is it a sign of? Could it contribute? Could it exacerbate and make it more prominent? Absolutely. I was unfortunate that I learned to drive, right, and I was ready for my test. And literally like a few weeks before I was about to take my test, they changed the way they do it. So now, rather than you had to, they say like left or right, and I kept going the wrong way and thus failed. So I will try again someday in the future, but it's difficult. Like, I remember lefty loosey, righty tighty and all, but even still my brain gets very much confused. And it's when I understand the concept of left and right, but when the word is said, the way that my ears hear it, it takes far longer to process than you would assume necessary. It's like none of these are difficult concepts, but yet the brain still, for some odd reason, decides to go a bit of a long route in order to get to a place where I'm able to decode it. All right, so on this is just a few questions. Chantel said, when I get people to give me directions and I drive, I tell people to say my side or your side. Yes, that's a classic one. Natalia said, until what age is struggling with left and right, developmental, approximate? My daughter will be 5 next week and still asks every time. I don't think it matters about age. I think this is something which can affect you your whole life. Again, it's not that it stops and starts, it's that you learn coping strategies. So for instance, you might have like a birthmark on you and you remember that's the left side, or you just find a way that works for you. I always just remember like the shape of an L. Funniest is when people say, make the L shape with your hand, and I look at my hand and I think they both make L's. Yes, Zach. That is also a very good point. It's all well and good if you remember which one makes the right shape. All right, now, what is the word for a monarch of ancient Egypt? I want you to try and spell it if you're able to. So the name of a monarch of ancient Egypt. And I purposely can't say it out loud. Okay, so we've got Pharaoh, Tutankhamun. Nice, we had quite a few diverse ones. Pharaoh. So as you can see, we've got quite a few different spellings here. And yet Tutankhamun was the name of the image, but it's not the general name. But the reason why this is quite an interesting one is that a lot of us know what a pharaoh is, but are we able to write it? The spelling is really challenging. And a lot of the time it will make us choose a different spelling altogether. We end up dumbing ourselves down despite actually knowing the answer. Natalie said, technically I misspelled it, but autocorrect jumped in, so I decided to be honest. Oh, you know what? I like that. So hopefully now by the end of this session, you're going to get a really good understanding about when people say, what do they mean by phonological or phonological dyslexia? You'll have a good solid understanding of whether or not this is you. This is a fun one, by the way, and I encourage as many of you to reply as possible. What are some words that rhyme with orange? And yeah, I got a little bit political with the image, but he's out now. Okay, we've got courage, orange, courage, possibly. Bit of a loose one. Okay, anyone else? Any words that you think rhyme with orange? Porridge? I think, you know, it depends what accent you're saying it in, doesn't it? Spoilage? Arrange? None? There aren't any? Maybe? Nothing? Trick question. Now, while you are still thinking of some other words that rhyme with orange, I will let you know why.
Porridge. Sorry, porridge. Orange porridge.
Orange. Oh, you scared me. Porridge. Kinda. It's not a great rhyme. But this relates to phonological dyslexia. A lot of people can really struggle to understand what rhymes. Like, this is a really tricky one. Like, orange is meant to be one of the hardest words to rhyme, and there aren't any true rhymes for orange, but it's very challenging. So, for instance, gnat, me. If I say, what rhymes with gnat? Gnat, cat, or pat, like, you know when you're trying to ask yourself, does that rhyme? And it should be easy, you should know, but you, for the life of you, can't work out. Gnat, cat. Nat cat, nat cat. No, probably not. Nat pat, maybe pat. So that's a really typical quality. As to words that rhyme with orange, unfortunately, I can't get this video to load on my computer because I've got some blocker, but I do recommend some of you checking this out later on. So there's this video by Eminem who proves that you can actually rhyme the word orange. I'm pretty certain it doesn't work on my computer, which is annoying, but he somehow manages to rhyme, though he's a bit sneaky with it. So for instance, he'll kind of slow the word down, he'll use hyphenated words. So if you're, you know, arguably cheating, there are ways, but rhyming is also a really challenging thing for people who struggle with phonological. April said, the word borange was made up to rhyme with orange in a book of absolutely useless lists for every day of the year. I like that. Borange. Oh, so the word was made up just for that purpose. Here in the US, we have the problem of N-controlled. AS isn't because we don't have the same diction and accent as in the UK. Yeah, that's true. So some words may rhyme in some countries, but not the others, depending on the accents. So Leah said he's seen this and he cheats by saying door ringe. And apparently there's 70 accents in the UK. I totally believe that. You know, it changes from just up the road. So on this one, which I do have, how many words are in this sentence? She sells seashells by the seashore. So how many words in that sentence? She sells seashells by the seashore. Oh, you can appreciate how much I struggled with that. That was painful.
6 words, 6 words.
You just gave the answer. No.
6,
So
yeah.
8, 5, 7. Well, the correct answer is 8. And that's a good one because, again, another thing with phonological dyslexics is that it can be very challenging to be able to work it out in your head. If you struggle with maths, it's a very similar thing. So with dyscalculia, it's about you understanding how to do maths in your head, but the brain really struggling to visualize it and move it around. And for this, it would require you to do some mental visualization and then being able to listen, to process, and to output. So as you can see, there's multiple steps. So depending on how much time you have, this might be easier or more difficult. But yeah, if you use your fingers, that's a good tactic. But if you were to do like no fingers, I think it would be a lot more challenging for a lot of us. All right, we've got a lot of people fingers. All right, next one, and feel free to say this out loud. What sound does a giraffe make? Okay, this is just going to be me sounding like a very ill giraffe for a while. And I picked this one as a bit of an extreme example, right? Because no one really knows what a giraffe makes. There is an answer, by the way, and I'll tell you in a moment. But with a lot of times with like phonological dyslexia, it can be very challenging to know the sounds of words. In essence, you know, so when people say, okay, what is the last kind of syllable in idea, or, you know, how would you pronounce that name? It's like not having an absolute clue. All of you hopefully know what a giraffe is. You know a lot about them, but to be able to verbally say the sound they make is just not in that database. It turns out though that giraffes do make a sound, and it's a bit of a like humming sound, but it's at like a frequency which human ears can't hear, apparently. I did my research earlier because there's always a smart aleck in the group who always wants to, you know, prove me wrong. So yeah, apparently they do have a sound, we just can't hear it very well. Apparently very close to a camel. Okay, like is a thingamajig filler word that you use a lot. Know what I mean? So on this question, I want you to tell me what are filler words you use. You know where people go, or like, April knows this when she edits these videos. I say now quite a lot. Now let's do this. Now, guys. Or like, or sweet. Any words that you use to fill a gap when you have no idea what you're saying or the brain freezes. So we got, I mean, yeah, I mean quite a lot. Know what I mean? Like, yeah, so, And these words are complete, they don't serve any benefit apart from giving you a little bit extra time to process information. A top tip though, and easier said than done, is if you do not know a word, say nothing. It gives you time to think. We feel that negative space, not having any like time to just saying nothing is a negative thing, and that we must say something. If any of you know or see Boris Johnson, he's like, he's a spluttering mess. And that's not because he has phonological dyslexia that I'm aware of. It's because, and this is purely speculation, but I think he does that because it stops people interrupting him. Because the second you pause for a breath, someone else jumps in on the conversation. So by spluttering along, he's able to keep himself in control of the dialogue. Now, obviously, for a lot of us, that is not the case. We do it because the brain needs time to think and process. And one of the worst things you can do if you support people with this type of dyslexia or these challenges is fill in the word. There is nothing worse, and I'm talking, my brain gets stuck. Give me 1 extra second and I'll figure it out and it will come out my brain, but you tell me anyway. I was like, you might be having a conversation with yourself, you know, let me think. I have noticed that my son, who is the first grade, often reads the word house as home. So obviously he recognizes it and knows what it means, but struggles to sound it out or read out loud. Yeah, that is a really good example where your brain just, it chooses a different word. It's obviously, if you understand the word house, you know what a home is, but you still mix it up. Other ones we got is, are you getting it at all? I like that. You know what I mean? Thingamajig. What's it? Yeah, what's it's a great one. Rah, rah, rah. I haven't heard many people say that, but I would appreciate that. What I'm on about, like we mentioned before. Yeah, so all these words are classic fillers. Now, I want you all to read out this out loud, and if you can understand it, there is something you need to do at the end of it. Some people can do this very easy, by the way, so it's not an impossible challenge. Other people would find it very difficult. Okay, so I see a few of you have already got it, which is good. Now this, to give it some context, this is complete English, but this is done in a way which is the phonological pronunciation. So say if an alien was trying to learn the English language, they'd be able to use this to work out the exact pronunciation. So this is different for English as it is for American. So this is done in the English way. And what it is, each word, it represents how you pronounce it. So as far as I guessed, it is dyslexia is a learning difficulty that promotes a deficit skin in a void. Okay. Dyslexia is a learning difficulty that primarily affects skills involving accuracy and fluent words, reading and spelling. It takes concentration, include processing, blah, blah, blah. The very last sentence was, hit the cat icon when finished. Whew. But another great example, and obviously all these examples I'm showing you are really exaggerated just to really hit home the point of what it can be like. So yes, together we were able to read this, but the amount of extra time it took us, we had to slow down, dissect it bit by bit. And this is what it can be like with someone who really struggles with phonological reading or speaking. So just keep that in mind. I find this is a really good way of empathy. And some of you might be thinking, I definitely have dyslexia and I can't read that. Remember, this is just an example of what it's like for someone who has no idea. As you witnessed, I couldn't read it. Okay, now I want you to try and sound out these words. So first of all, this is probably the easiest one, but also very difficult. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Even though the sound of it sounds quite atrocious, if you say it loud enough, it always sounds repulsious. Yeah, so this is a good word. And it's a really long word that many of us cannot pronounce. Another great one is this. And this is a sound which people make in the written form. So, you know, that's all it is. And if I was to say that to you and say, spell it, a lot of you, just like the giraffe sound, would have a real difficulty in being able to verbalize it and to put it in text. So yes, the ears can hear it, but the brain is not able to take the sound and to process it into written language. Yeah, April's like, it's like tutting. And this one, which I can't even read at all. Pheromonal. Yeah, not even gonna try. It's a lung disease. And I believe it is the longest word in the English language. Correct me if I'm wrong. So yeah, all these are great examples of long words that are very difficult to say. And these are obviously extreme examples, but even simpler ones can be quite challenging for people who struggle with phonological. All right, do these words rhyme? Distribution and retribution. So in your humble opinion, do they rhyme? And you would think this would be quite a straightforward question, right? It should be 100% right. And it almost is, but one person thinks it isn't. And that's not to say, it's that when you're reading it, the more you read it, the more the brain is questioning, does it rhyme? Distribution, retribution. And this does rhyme because of the second half of the word bution is the same. And thus, it doesn't really matter what the front word is. But depending how you break down the word and how you choose to, or how you're able to pronunciate it, will determine whether or not it rhymes. So for this example, I actually thought it would be more split. But for different accents, different regions, and say if you are in another country or in another region of a country and you really struggle to comprehend what someone is saying, it's not always related to, it can be related to the accent. So when I go to Scotland, I have no idea what they're saying. You know, okay, mate. Yeah. And that is because the words that they're saying aren't words that my brain has remembered. So if they say, I don't know, it's a really simplistic word like hello, and they say it near enough, very completely different to how I say it, my brain has remembered the way that my region says it, and thus my brain struggles to convert that subtle difference. And that's why it can be quite difficult to understand someone, even if they're speaking the same language as you. And Leah said, the longest word is the chemical name for Titan. Feel free to say it if you know it. Now, this is the last one we've got. And sing the song out loud, because singing is a different way of processing information and speaking. You know the Hannah Banana song, if any of you are old enough to remember it? Oh, Lee says that word takes 2 hours to say. Well, we're running a bit short on time, so maybe next time. Louise said when she went to uni, struggled with the Southern English accent from the north. Yeah, I vice versa. Good luck if you, well, I suppose you're used to it now, so you can remember mine because I'm from the south. And this song is something along the lines of Hannah, Hannah, Bomana, Fee, Fi, Fo, Fana, Me, Mama, Ho, Hannah, you know. And it's a complete made up word again. And when it comes to singing, you've got to obviously read very fast to keep the flow. And this word is very good at like tripping the brain up. If you haven't seen the song, I recommend going on YouTube. It's a very fun, catchy song, which is very difficult to remember. Now, concluding all the fun activities, as always, if any of you would think, you know what, that sounds exactly like me or someone I know, you can get help. So we support organizations with dyslexia as well as other ways of learning. But if you're an individual and you're currently in job or hope to be starting a job soon, you can actually get a grant. And I like to mention this at the end of all the presentations because if you're in the UK, it's free money and support, not in the form of like a note, unfortunately, but in training and equipment. But all other countries will hopefully have an equivalent. Alternatively, you can come see us for a chat. We're completely free. We're a social enterprise. You can always book in a chat and happy to talk in a little bit more detail. Now, any questions? This is a great time for you to either say out loud on the app, on the chat, any questions related to dyslexia, phonological challenges, anything, or you have a point or something you'd like to share. Now is your time.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because I'm studying at college, the computer and the skills, can the teacher get some? I've asked her for help, additional help towards computer technology, like assistive technology. Yeah. But I think some of it, they're reluctant to provide that. Can they get a grant from me?
Yes, so they do have funding available for those. And typically, if you're registered with a disability, they'll normally automatically get the funding. If you are not, then they find it from elsewhere. But for instance, they can get someone to read questions for you in an exam-like setting, which is quite useful, not for those who can't read, but for those who process better through hearing. And that's quite a good one. Another example is you could get special software which reads back to you. So I have software on my computer that reads back. The good example is a lot of people with dyslexia, particularly adults, are always quite apprehensive about getting special software which helps them read because they're like, I'm an adult, I can read. But remember, it's not about can or can't read. It's about what way the brain prefers to learn. And if it prefers to hear things or it's able to confirm what you already believe to know to be true, nothing wrong in it.
So the college can get me someone like if it's an exam or something, they can get someone who can talk to me the answers.
Yeah, I mean, it depends college per college, but or university, but yeah, they very likely should be a department for it. I wouldn't like to say 100%, but there should be an additional learning team that would have funding available.
But what kind of software can they get for you?
Oh, it ranges a lot. But for instance, you can get software which talks back to you, software where you talk and it writes out, advanced spelling equipment, special laptops which are made for this sort of stuff. Another question I've got here that I just want to answer quickly is, do you need an official diagnosis to say you're dyslexic? No. So it's about, we are all neurodiverse. All it means is, do we think differently? And as a human species, we are very unique. So, no. And officially, under the Equality Act, there isn't anything which states you need absolutely proof. If you resonate with it, so for instance, in the UK, if you wanted to have a workplace needs assessment under access to work, you don't need proof. I would say, however, having proof as a child is very beneficial for the school system because it can be very difficult to get support without it. But as an adult, a lot of time, the Equality Act covers you. So your employer has to make reasonable adjustments if you resonate with, say, being dyslexic. Okay, this one is, so I'm curious because I'm someone that struggles with writing and extending sentences. So is that, if I'm understanding this right, is it that you have words and you struggle to expand upon them? I might need a little bit more context on that one, but that is related to dyslexia. When someone asks you an answer and you give them a really simplistic form, even though you have more to expand in your head, you just find you end up not doing it. And the last one I got on here is, I'm diagnosed in Canada as a child. Would I need to be re-diagnosed in the UK? No. There are certain, it depends where you are in your life. Like if you're going after certain money, which is for autism or ADHD, it's different, but for dyslexia, it wouldn't make any difference. There may be some places which do not recognize it, but I would say the very vast majority would, because at the end of the day, you shouldn't have to prove you have a registered disability. It's more about what sort of support do you need. If you have phonological dyslexia, and bear in mind, I'm saying everyone has a mixture, and someone's trying to teach you in a very like surface dyslexia focus, you're not going to get great results. But if you understand the type of dyslexia, which you predominantly have, you can tailor the teaching and support that is available. So I couldn't say for certain, but I would say you wouldn't need another one.
Where can you get an assessment for to know which kind of dyslexia you've got?
Okay, so that's a really good question. There's not enough, because like I said, a dyslexic diagnosis is like a one size fits all, but your best bet is to research the different types that are available and ask yourself, okay, how do I prefer to learn? And kind of work it out yourself. There's things online where you can work out, okay, am I more of a visual learner? Am I more of an auditory learner, kinesthetic? So it kind of relates to that, but there isn't like an official way of saying, you know, here's a nice stamp of I have phonological. A last little thing Louisa says, I struggle with phonics and loved Letterland. I loved Letterland too as a kid, still found memories, and I really struggled with letters, spelling, pronunciation, and my mum spent a lot of time helping me outside school. I'll call it brilliantly. Yeah, I remember Letterland. What was that? Annie, Apple, Bouncing Ben, Clever Cat. I want to say Dippy Duck. But yeah, that's it. So, guys, that is, unless any of you have any other questions, what I would say is we've got webinars coming out of our ears coming up in the next few months, and we've got ones on the history of dyslexia, which is really interesting, as well as dyslexia in pop culture, where you can learn a little bit more about the history and kind of like who in society and the way it's being shown on images. I'm getting tongue-tied now. Oh, and many thanks. This was illuminating. I like that. Yes, and Chantel, all of these are on Eventbrite. So the same way you found this, just go on Eventbrite and type exceptional individuals, and you'll get a whole list of all these webinars, and they will be uploaded to YouTube within a week. So you can watch back time and time again and relive those fond memories that you've had today.
Can I ask another question before we go?
Yeah, treat yourself. Go for it.
When was the last one you did? The last website you did about Asperger's, do you have autism or Asperger's?
Oh, yeah.
I want to, have you got, is there some way I can look at that again somehow?
Yeah, so it's on our YouTube channel, and what we can do, so a lot of you have asked, I can just email you all a link after today with a list of our YouTube as well as upcoming events, so it makes it a lot easier if that would be helpful. Yeah,
please do that. Yeah, please do. I really appreciate that.
All right. Oh, well, thank you so much for all the kind words in the comments. It's really nice. And I hope that today's, been helpful in some regards, or at least help define a bit more about what people mean when they talk about struggling with phonics and phonological. All right. Well, go off you pop. Go and enjoy your day. It's been lovely having you.
Thank you. Bye now.